So how was all that for you, Ramez? Did you stay for listening to all that stuff?
Yeah, I was listening.
Jeremy, that's the first time I've seen you without your hat.
For some reason, I wear the hat so much. Every time I take it off, usually it's at work. Someone's like, I didn't know what I expected to see underneath your hat, but I don't know if it's what I see now. It's funny.
Welcome, everybody. I'm always blown out by the pictures that people put up of themselves, and it's almost always they put up pictures of their younger self. We have this thing of how do we look? Yeah. I have this.
You're inspiring me to put up a picture of me when I was like 5 years old, just to go all in on it.
Yeah, some do. Some put up pictures of themselves as kids. Yeah. I've got amongst my gallery of pictures, I've got a picture of myself poking my tongue out and pulling a face, and I often am tempted to put that one up, but it would be interesting.
Well, it's also the difference with makeup and no makeup.
Oh, of course, yes. Well, that's not. I mean, I guess it's whether I have my hair combed and my teeth in or whatever. Yeah. Well, here we are. So you're still sitting on the perch there, James?
If that was your way to lead me in to say something, okay, I'll take the bait. The thing that struck me this week was the fact that actually, all the other time I've been saying, oh, I get it, and I understand this about it. And I realized this week that I actually haven't got a clue. Because I don't believe I've had a glimpse. So therefore, I actually have no idea what it's like.
Okay, so the important thing that jumps up for me then straight away is what hangs off that? How do you feel about not having a clue? Is that, I mean, for me, not having a clue is a liberating experience. For others, it's the opposite, or something, some detail. How do you feel about not having a clue? Do you think you should have a clue?
I find myself sort of a foot in both camps. There's a part of me that says, I need to understand this. I should have a clue. Of course, I've got to know what's going on. And there's another part that you've been dragging out of me for the last several months that goes, oh, what the fuck? It's just like, that's the way it is. That's the way it is, So, yes, I'm stuck somewhere in the middle, it feels like, whether there is a middle, just to say. And just waiting to see what happens.
Okay. So, all right. Have you got 1 foot on either side of a barbed wire fence?
No, it doesn't feel that bad.
Okay.
That's a pity.
Yeah.
The word bastard comes to mind there, Alan.
we
So,
would want that to be
I mean, the other
comfortable to be that
thing when I
heavy.
was, yeah, the other thing that also struck me this week when I was on LU and I'm typing out my responses to things and stuff, and I'm using the word I and me in the way I would sort of normally use them, in everyday language. And then I also realized that I didn't know what either of those words actually meant. So I to answer your
So-
question about if is it okay having a clue? I'm quite happy being lost at the moment.
So James,
Yes.
those two words you said you didn't have a clue. Have you really looked?
Yes. I mean, not specifically this week, but I mean, over the last several months.
Well, is that perhaps a little bit of a clue? Not specifically this week. You're not looking. This is what it's about. We just got to look and look and look.
Okay. I will put my nose back to the magnifying glass.
Don't think about it. Don't go to thought about it. You'll never get an answer there about what that meant. It
So-
doesn't mean anything, but when we look,
See, this
something-
is where it's good that you're on Zoom, because at this point I want to punch you in the nose, because
Right.
you say things like, "Oh, right, you've got to," I don't mean literally, but it's like you say, "Okay, you've got to look," and then I go, "Okay, I'll look," and then you go, "No, don't do that."
But when did I say don't do that?
I thought you said don't. Oh God, I can't remember your actual words. You said
If I-
look, and then I went, "Oh, I'll put my nose to the magnifying glass," and it sounded
Okay.
like you were saying, "Oh, you don't want to do it that way," or something, or.
Well, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what I said was don't go to the mind to find the answer. Just look.
If you, okay,
And I'd like
if
to
that's what
jump
you
in-
said, then perfectly.
I'd like to jump in here and suggest that there's a level underneath where you might automatically go to look. And if when you first say I will look at the words I and me and see what they actually mean, keep in mind the possibility that they may not mean anything, or more accurately, that any meaning is a constructed overlay. It's not inherent in the words. So whatever the words are that you use like that, the value is in recognizing how can I put it? What they reflect in terms of your attachment to something. So is there identification in using those words, or are they just used because that's the way our language works and we're using them in a loose, relaxed kind of way? Or are we actually pointing to something that we think exists, which intellectually, doesn't exist?
Yeah, I can give you an example. I had a friend this week who called me up having a bit of a rough time. Yeah. So I organized to go and have a coffee with him. Yeah. And as you say, there's this sort of understanding that this is all just happening. Yeah. None of this was planned. Life happens. But it felt like I was going to listen to him. I identified with something that felt it was me that was taking my ears to go and listen to the words that he was going to say to me that I could understand and maybe help him. So yeah, there was a whole identification wrapped up in that.
Right. Now, when you saw that,
yeah,
what was your response? How did you react to that, seeing that identification? Did you see it as something that shouldn't be there, that you've got to kill, that is wrong, any of that stuff? Or did you just smile and enjoy the fact that here was this spontaneous identification happening?
Oh, there was definitely a little bit of a smile. I can't say I guffawed out loud and laughed about it, but there was something that was pleasant about noticing it.
Yes, right. That sounds good. Now, what I imagine was when you got together with your friend who was having a bit of a hard time, that you were really, really aware of how his suffering was caused by his thinking pattern and his response to that.
Yes. Yeah. It's easy to see in other people, or easier to see in other people, the fact that he was, you know, telling stories about what he thought was going to happen and then making up huge stories about what had happened. Yeah, it was really easy to see in him. And I realized I couldn't say to him, oh, that's all just a story, because for him it was completely solid, concrete, and real.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
So I was a little bit stuck, and I think it probably worked well for me because I just sat there and listened.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Yeah, especially in the early days of waking up, we tend to want to fix the world, and we can be a bit over the top with other people. That's been my experience. But yeah, so that was pretty good stuff, James. Yeah, you kind of behave a lot like a awake person a lot of the time. You do.
Thank you.
Well, don't thank me. I'm just describing what I see, not no compliments involved. Yeah. Mm. It's really interesting seeing Franz Wasserman and thinking Terry. Oh, she's frozen. Hey.
Ramesh has a hand up.
Ramesh, yes.
I want to ask how to investigate the sense of agency and choice and control, like any suggestion or
Yeah. Okay. I'd really like, James, I'd like you to respond to Ramesh about that. How would you investigate the sense of agency and control?
How would I? My glib answer would be to listen to everything that Vince says, but he's asking me to respond. So, so
That's a cop out.
I was exactly, completely. I was given some advice this week that I should keep asking myself, what is seeing this? So if you have an emotion, if you do something, if you pick something up and you feel it and it's warm, whatever you say, what's seeing this? Yeah. Now, sadly, I kept coming up with, I couldn't quite nail it down, but I think that would be the advice I would give. If you're looking for your sense of agency, then it is the core of what is seeing it, what's doing it, what's feeling it, because even when I say these words, there's something doing it. Something else is making the words happen. Something else is, seeing the screen rather than what I think of as myself. That's all I can really say.
Mm.
And I seem to have lost Ramiz, or I scared him off. Oh, no, there you are. You're back.
Yeah,
How did that sound to you, Ramiz? You're muted.
1 second.
Aha.
Yeah, for me, it seems like I don't have a choice in things outside me, and even things that I do. But I feel like the sense of agency is when I'm talking and when I'm making a choice.
You know, when you said you don't feel that you have that agency with things outside you, what's the difference between those things that you don't have agency outside and you feel you do have agency inside?
I don't know, like when I have a feeling, it seems like I'm not making the feeling or I'm not responsible for it. It just happens.
Yeah.
But when I have to make a choice, it feels like I must make the choice. It feels, I don't know how, this is how it feels like. I don't know what's the difference.
Neither do I. I mean, I've come to the conclusion that it feels like I'm doing something or making a choice, but when I really look at it, I realize I'm not. I don't know if that happens for you, but you know, that's what happens for me.
When I think about it, conceptually, yes, I don't make a choice, but it feels like I'm making a choice.
Yes. And I wish I could take you further, but I'm at exactly the same point as you. So we'll have to pass you on to more experienced hands now. And anybody who's got a more experienced hand who feels like jumping in, please save me from myself and do so.
Actually, I think that a good way to see this is that you can make a choice, but you can choose what you're choosing, you know, like some meta thing. That's why you have the impression, you have this feeling of choosing things, because you are making a choice, but you cannot choose what you choose. Can you guys relate to that?
Conceptually, yes.
Yeah. So let's take an example of you walking across the room to sit down where you are now. When that happened, so we're looking at what's already done, what's already happened. And when that happened, was there a point before it happened or at the beginning of it where there was a consideration to do it this way or to do it a different way? And most likely the answer is no, it just happened. But if you look back at it, mind can say, well, I could have done it differently. I could have walked around the other side of that piece of furniture, or I could have taken bigger steps, or I could have whatever. I could have done it differently. And that's where the illusion of choice comes from. So will that illusion of choice ever go away? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter because it's an illusion. We recognize it as an illusion. It's the mind that comes in after an event that gives us, that promotes the illusion that we had a choice about doing things. So even if you did stand there and go, will I go left around that bit of furniture or right around that bit of furniture? Whichever way actually happens when you do it is the only way that it could have happened. There was no possibility for it to be the other way because all of the conditions involved in doing what you did do were there aligned for that to happen. And something was missing, some condition wasn't there that would have taken you around the other way. So whatever happened had to happen the way it happened. But the mind will come in afterwards and say, no, I could have done that differently. Therefore, I made a choice. But you have to ask yourself, did you make a choice? That's my take on it. Somebody else?
Yeah, I'll jump in again, Vince. I mean, the way I can get a handle on this, and maybe I shouldn't be getting a handle, is if I think about when I was born, I didn't have a choice to do that. You know, and I didn't have a choice, or I didn't make the choice when I made my first breath, and I didn't make the choice when I made my first step, and I didn't make the choice about what school I went to. You know, so if I follow that train of thought, maybe I made a choice when I was about 14, 15, and I decided which subjects I was going to take at school. You know, I was good at maths, good at physics. I decided to do those. But if I think about it, by the time I got to that point, I'd never made a decision before. And so that when I got to that point, there was only one thing I was going to do. You know, I was going to pick maths. I was going to pick physics. And then, you know, my exam results, I didn't have a choice in. You know, what job I took, I thought I had a choice. But again, everything that's leading up to that led me to one place at one time to do one thing. So if for me, if I through my whole life from being born, I've never actually made a choice anywhere along the way. I felt as though I had, but at any particular point, there was only one thing I was ever going to do, or that was ever going to happen. So that's my take on it.
Yep.
I don't know.
I
Yeah,
feel like
it's
there
great.
are stepping stones to the choosing, or different aspects. So I can tell you, before I came onto this meeting, I went to turn on the heater because it felt cold, and I turned on the heater and I was like, "What's that smell?" And I was like, "Oh wow, the dog sprayed the heater." And I didn't think like I'm going to unplug the heater. Like my body just unplugged the heater and went and did something with the heater. And I came back and, you know, I had my reaction is happening. You know, what the heck? The dog sprayed the heater. That all, I didn't think like, oh, I'll have this chemical flood. This thing will happen. I'll have these feelings. But then sometimes I will feel, I came back upstairs and there's this meeting or another meeting. And part of me is feeling like, oh, I could choose, you know, I had this sense I could choose one or the other. And then there's a sense that the choice in some ways is just being made, like the choice is just happening. Something like that happened with me yesterday. Like, do I visit this friend or not visit this friend? But sort of seeing what is the body deciding. But I also share that piece where sometimes if the choices can feel more complicated or entangled. Like there's another example. I have a kid who's 18 downstairs sleeping, and he was going to get up and go to a class at 11 o'clock. And I opened the door and did the pieces I was going to do, but he, you know, he's not up and going to class. And then I can have thoughts about what I think should or shouldn't happen. You know, this idea about parenting, and then this piece too about what did I decide to go down and do something about it or not do something about it, what's right or wrong. So I can kind of feel in my body where sometimes I have the belief, the feeling that it's just happening. And other times, particularly when there's more, I might say, bodily response to what feels like a choice, it can feel more complicated. And I'm curious about other people's experience in that regard, or, you know, what that elicits in other people.
I know when I was pregnant with my middle son, and I thought I was going to have an abortion because I was on my own and blah blah. And so I went as far as getting to the hospital and going into the operating room and being sedated and laying there, and the doctor reeling off all the notes that I'd said, the reasons why I wasn't going to have this baby. And we went all the way through it. And then I just got a feeling of this. I knew he was a boy. And I thought, oh, this boy loves Christmas. Oh, and I just said, I changed my mind. And I don't know. That was obviously always going to happen. But I mean, it was like the last minute I had to get to. And it felt like it was a choice, but it was an inevitability. It was never, ever, ever going to happen. But I had to take it to that extent, which seems mad, but yeah, it wasn't a choice, but I thought it was at the time. I see now, it was always inevitable. Couldn't have been any other way.
Yeah, this brings us to the idea of free will, and it's, if we say, I recognize that we don't have free will, but not having free will doesn't mean the opposite. It doesn't mean determinism as such. So the way I think of it is more in line with my interpretation of the Buddhist idea of, I think it's called conditioned arising or something like that. So when you think about it, if you think, here we are talking today, here we are on Zoom, what are the conditions that are required for that to happen? Right? They're just infinite number of conditions. We have to be able to do it. We have to be fit enough to do it. We have to have the technical ability to do it. We have to have the technical equipment to do it. We have to have the desire to do it. We have to have all of these conditions. And when you think about it, if the mere fact that I'm here, well, you know, if my parents had not had me, I wouldn't be here. You know, if my father had had a flu on the night that I was conceived, it may not have happened. At every single condition, every single thing that has ever happened, and if we go back to my father, then of course his father and his father and his father, and we go back, we go back to the beginning of existence, and every single thing that has ever happened had to be exactly the way it was in order for this to be happening the way it is now. Change one thing, change one flap of a butterfly wing in the Amazon 100,000 years ago. If that was different, this would be different. Everything is dependent on everything else. And it's like, wow, that's so amazing. There are so many conditions involved. There's just an infinite number, and they're always changing. They're always evolving. So there's nothing set in stone, but at the same time, there's not really any choice anywhere in anything that happens. It's going to happen because of all those conditions being present and lined up the way they are. That's my story anyway.
Well, and when you see it that way, it alters everything. It alters your whole world.
I think choice, if
It is one
in a really liberating way, I think. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Totally liberating. Carry on, sorry.
if you're using the concept of choice, that implies a chooser. So if there's a self there to choose, then it's appropriate to talk about choice.
Yeah.
But if you're not seeing an independent self, then the whole concept of choice goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
reason to think in terms of choice.
No.
That makes a lot of sense. And so then what it fits with what I feel or was saying is that the more, if something is more challenging in terms of identity, the closer it is, or the harder we're stuck with identities, the harder it is, the more I'm feeling like, oh yeah, there still is a me. It's kind of like what I said weeks ago, Vince, with like, well, some thoughts aren't real, but some thoughts are, like there's not a me over here, but there is a me over there. So if it's like, what toilet paper do I pick? It doesn't really matter. But if I have more identity around, well, it's my child or some idea, my child, my grandchild, my choice, my money, my whatever, it's like it ramps up this sense of. So what are people's experience in terms of like levels of identification? If anybody even thinks of it that way, like, on the one hand, they don't exist, but seemingly, especially I feel like related to how it sits in my body, I have more of a response to certain things compared to other things.
Yeah.
So then it's just a matter of seeing how those are all overlays. You don't need to impose levels once it's all recognized as like an add-on or an overlay on what's actually there. It's conceptual and it's thought-based. It's a construction of thinking to impose that.
One exercise that I have found helpful for looking into this is to find some way of, like for me, it's like I'll put my hand here and I will, language is hard here, but I'll do the smallest possible movement so that I can, like I'll just lift my index finger like a millimeter and do that repeatedly. And while doing that, look for any evidence that there's an I that's controlling it. Look for any evidence of the thought that seems related to when I start to move the finger. And so I think that picking something that is as tiny and small as possible can help look into whether I have any control over it, whether I made any decision related to it, compared with even a bigger movement like standing up and walking across the room. If you look for something that allows you to perceive movement, or whether it's seeing your finger or whether it's feeling muscles contract, paring it down to the smallest possible thing has been a helpful way for me to investigate whether there was any decision or control involved.
And
So maybe
a really relevant question is, where did the idea come from to do that? Why that idea and not another one?
And maybe the most subtle thing to look at is attention. Is there control of attention, the movement of attention?
Ooh. Wow, it's also
When
mind-boggling.
I was going through can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. When I was going through LU, I was given an exercise similar to what I think Jeremy was just describing about lifting a finger and seeing whether I had any control over it. And, I'm amazed at those who go through LU and get that within, less than a few days, because for me, that was 8 years ago, and my understanding of that is still deepening. And what I'm seeing is how the way thought supports the idea that I'm choosing to lift my finger is very complex isn't the right word, although it is complex, but it's like a magician. Thought is really trying, it's really working to create this elaborate illusion that I am lifting the finger. Thoughts arise. Okay, I'm going to lift my finger right now. I'm the one who's deciding, and I'm going to lift it right now. And then the finger lifts, and then thought says, see, I lifted the finger right when I said I would. Ha, I'm really in charge here. And, over the years, it's just taking so long for me to really see, it's almost unbelievable to me that there's so much sleight of hand going on, and that this really is all in a way a magician's cleverness to make it look like there is an eye that is lifting the finger. So I don't know how it is that some people get that when they do it once or twice, or maybe people don't really get it. Maybe some of us are more hypnotized by the illusion than others are more invested in believing it. So I hope that maybe helps somebody understand why it feels like I am lifting the finger. And I think there's a semantic thing going on there. It's not a feeling that we're lifting the finger. It's a notion that we're lifting the finger. It's a belief system that we're lifting the finger, just to be,
I love the idea the mind.
Correct about what's happening.
I love the idea the mind is a magician.
Let me enter. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me make a recommendation here. This is a book, The Direct Path by Greg Good. This is Liberation Unleashed, direct experience exercises on steroids. This whole book is a series of direct experience inquiries. Each one of them is about a page or so. And really what it is the thing I've been harping on constantly is looking at the nature of thought and how it's really more of a magician than a realist. I highly recommend it. I actually didn't find the book until after I'd gone through Liberation Unleashed, but it cleared away a ton of cobwebs in that confusing period afterwards. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's probably one of the most influential books I've ever read. And if I haven't read 10,000 books, I haven't read one. It's a work of art before the gate. It's a work of art after the gate. And it addresses exactly a lot of this conversation going on in this group. So I highly recommend it to anyone.
Who's it by?
Greg Good. Kat. Goode. The Direct Path. It's just a series of direct experience exercises. It's just simple stuff like touching exercises and tasting an orange, touching an extension, touching your hand, touch and hardness and softness, hearing, smelling, and tasting. The body is an object that senses. Pain is your arm in a certain position. They're all just a series of short exercises that make you look at the way in a way, it kind of cuts through this idea of free will, because a lot of these exercises, you will be realizing that thought has just completely gone off the path of what your body has done. So it'll helpful with this conversation that we're having right here, right now. I guarantee you, if you go through this book, you will be changed.
Thank you. I want to add something too to that. That's just, you know, what you said, Vince, really, you know, having the thought that anything could be different just brought me right back to there's just what's happening. And then this thought that it could be different. Of course, it can't be different. If it can't be different, then there's really not choice. Who would be choosing? But I'm even looking at when people talk about choosing to wake up or choosing to be committed to a certain belief or something, who would be doing that? Because if the thought that anything could be different says that there's something or someone doing something that has a choice. So there's nothing even choosing to wake up. Like all of this is just happening.
Everything is a reaction.
Just like, because I've gotten glimpses of it before, but that was just, I don't know, for some reason this time when you said that, I'm like, oh my God.
Well, if you ever look closely, everything is actually a reaction. I mean, even the exercise in Liberation Unleashed, where they say, are you actually raising your hand? And people start raising and lowering their hand. Well, would they actually be raising and lowering their hand if I hadn't told them to do that? In other words, they're reacting to me in a sense. And when you really look back at the beginning of things, you'll see life is just kind of a series of reactions.
Possibly or not, because there's no time, there's no past. So what would anybody or anything be reacting to? Like, even take it one more step deeper. Is it reaction or is it just happening and the mind is trying to make up reaction? But then there would be a past if there was reaction.
Yeah, if you go there, that there is no time. When you're in fetters 1, 2, and 3, it's very, very difficult because you're shotgunning beliefs. In other words, time is actually a separate belief from at Liberation Unleashed. The focus on, is there a separate self separate from reality? And the time is kind of another belief. And if you take time away from people, it makes it it can make it very confusing. From the absolute point of view, I agree with you. But when you start talking from the absolute point of view, it's difficult to guide from that. You have to let some beliefs go.
Well, that's just my experience. My direct experience is what I was just describing, but is probably beyond what we're dealing with here in this call. Correct? Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. It's time, you know, the existence of time and stuff is kind of, you mess around with that up in fetters. I want to say up in fetters 6 through 10 or over in fetters 6 through 10. It's just, I've always thought, challenge one belief at the time and try to stick to that one belief and try to ignore all the peripheral stuff that they come out with, because every post they post in Liberation Unleashed is full of different beliefs.
Right, but this is a direct experience I'm describing.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
right.
Yeah,
yeah, there's just this moment. That's it.
Yeah, and if that's maybe if what you're trying to say beyond where we are with this call.
Yeah, well, that's
like
one of the things.
for some people?
That's one of the things you'll see in this book. He does a series of time exercises in this book, such as one of the things I say all the time. Does one thought know anything about another thought? Well, the answer is no. And could one thought know anything about another thought? Because that thought has disappeared before the current thought has appeared in time. If there is no time, then that thought has disappeared. It couldn't possibly communicate with a thought in the present moment. So there's a whole series of thought experiments that will let you see through time, in the sense that the things that we think are connected or can't actually be connected. So it's just highly recommended, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'd like to remind us all to keep with our own experiencing rather than philosophizing about stuff. And then I want to philosophize a bit. So one of the things about choice, or let's imagine something else. One of the things about a resistance to accepting that there isn't a choice, that I am not making a choice, put it that way, you know. One of the resistances there is got to do with identification. So when I identify, so if I don't exist and I am not making a choice, that can be a pretty fearful place for some people to go. Especially if we don't have a strong self-opinion. If we're not strong in our identity, it gets frightening to think about losing that identity, or about recognizing that it doesn't actually exist. It's not as if we're going to lose something that exists. It's that we're going to recognize that it never really existed. But there's a reason why we often, well, for a lot of people, there's a reason why they don't accept that there is no choice. And that is because it takes them to a fear place.
If there's no choice, there's no regrets.
Yeah,
So,
Vince has disappeared.
yeah, that's freedom.
You know,
Yeah.
There was something I wanted to say when I was speaking a few moments ago that I forgot to say. For me, it was hard to accept or see that thought doesn't cause action, because it was clear to me that thought is correlated with action. You know, it's not, you know, with raising my finger, the thoughts, there were thoughts about raising my finger before and after raising it. So for me, I think it would have been helped if someone had just said, you know, it's not that thoughts are arbitrary. They, you know, very often before we do something, we have a thought about doing it. Infinitely more often we don't, but certainly when we have thoughts about doing something, it's often right before doing that thing. And that's part of the magician's trick, is creating thoughts that have something to do with what's going on, to make it look like the thoughts causing what's going on.
The fact that having no choice means having no guilt or regrets really hits me, because I was just thinking that I'm scared of not having a choice, because I don't want to feel regret. I don't want to feel like I've done the wrong thing. And it's backward.
Yeah.
It's like I'm holding in the feeling of doing the right thing, and the cost of that I will feel regret and guilt.
And regret and guilt are to do with your beliefs.
Ramiz, do you get that the idea of doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing, is just another way to say that you have a choice? I mean, the ramifications
I think
go through everything.
I think it's coming from this fear. Like, I want to make sure to make the right thing because I don't want to feel regret.
Okay, but what
Like
I'm
I'm
saying
avoiding
is-
to feel the shame of being wrong.
yeah, okay, two things. There is no right or wrong thing except what we construct and overlay. So every society has a different idea about what's right or what's wrong. Okay, so there is no right or wrong actual thing. It's just another idea that's brought to the play. But before that, there is this thing of doing. So if there's no choice, there is no doing. Things happen, but it's not you doing them. So if you say the word, the sentence, I want to do the right thing, right? Firstly, there's no I. There is this appearance of a want. There is no doing. There is no right, and there is no thing. There's only one word in that entire sentence that has any validity whatsoever, and even that's a bit shaky.
Vince, does this not go back to kind of if there are some underlying core beliefs that have supported a sense of identity? You know, how you were talking about if to recognize that the I doesn't really exist can be shaky for some people. So
Yeah.
if we're really identified, you know, with being one who is wrong or bad or shameful or who make mistakes, it can be really hard then to almost give that up. Right?
Yeah.
Because it has not been integrated in a way that it's, yeah. So even if we can know intellectually or make that jump about choice, if that belief is running,
I agree.
yeah.
That was a really shitty bit of guiding on my part to actually tell Ramiz that stuff, because what we need to do is help him to discover that himself. And I'm a bit lost about how to do that. You know, that's why I resorted to simply telling him that stuff. So yeah, I agree with you. But yeah, help me. How do we help Ramiz to understand that? How do we help him to integrate that?
Well, it's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, if you haven't had the experience of the I dropping out, of the me going, then if you haven't had that experience, it's just intellectual. You have to believe someone that is the way it is until you've had the experience of losing the self, the I. It's only then that you truly know there's no choice.
Yeah, okay. So it all rests on that I belief, doesn't it? So what do you think about an I, Ramiz? Do you recognize that I is really a conceptual construct?
It feels like a center of gravity. Like it's like a tornado. It has a center, and it feels like the strong aspects of it is fear. Like it's the core is fear, and around it is a feeling of trying to control things. Try to manage, trying to make the right thing, try to understand things. And it's like making a choice is like things go in a flow, the things that outside of my seeming control, until there is a choice to be made. And then there is like a loop. I'm sucked into this tornado. I'm thinking about what to do. And it feels like heavy. It feels like I'm sucked into this tornado, and I'm the flow is like stops, and I'm stuck here.
Yeah, I've said before, and you confirm it for me, that the whole, I don't know if you call it a purpose, the whole reason an eye exists is it's body armor. It's protect us from that fear state of non-existence or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah. So somehow, in order to let go of the I, we have to get over the fear of what we imagine or what appears to be there when there's no I. And for you, that tornado, although it appears to be a problem, it's actually your way of keeping safe, your way of keeping away from that horrible center of non-existence.
I've got something to add. When I was first seeing through choice, and I saw it came in layers for me too, but when I first started seeing through it, I would look at how I needed to make a choice, or I had the illusion I need to make a choice. And then I would just obsess about right or wrong. If I do this, it'll be that. And I would project all these imaginary futures based on which choice I was going to make. And I would just totally mentally couldn't sleep at night because I had to make a choice and I had to make the right one because there was irreparable damage if I didn't. And so what I started doing was, is that what you're talking about, Ramirez? That thinking
exactly.
before the choice?
Yeah,
and
think
then
about consequences and
and I had to make sure I covered every base to make sure I made the right choice. And then afterwards, there was still regret because, if I had known that, I wouldn't have done that and blah, blah, blah. Now there's past regret about a choice that was made. And so what I started doing was slow down and watch it. So when you believe you have to make a choice, that's the first thought, I have to make a choice. And then watch how the mind starts thinking and projecting and strategizing and worrying and how it feels in your body to do that. And then notice when the choice gets made, a choice is made, and then notice the after effects and just watch it. Because as you watch it, what I started noticing was the choice still got made, but without the mental chaos and commentary. So I started catching that mental chaos and commentary, that storm before a choice was made, and realized and started looking at, okay, the little time capsule in which the choice was made, and started focusing on that as a separate thing, apart from the chaotic mind on either side of it, the before and after chaotic mind and the storm, and then to kind of separate this little moment the choice is made as its own thing. And that's what helped me see that, well, finger moved, choice was made, button hit, thing purchased or whatever, or yes or no, or vote made, whatever, it's done as a separate thing. And it started to uncouple it from all the chaotic mind before and after. Does that make sense? You just watch, slow down and watch it.
Yeah, you have to slow down.
And that way it doesn't like scoot, chaos in the mind, and then choices made and then chaos after, and it's just one big storm. But if you can start just kind of, not right now in your mind, but as it's actually happening, watch the chaos, be okay with the chaos, it's going to happen, don't try to change it. Then you'll notice this one moment when that choice happens or seems to happen, and then the mind will start up again after that, or even might be going while you're making the choice. But if you start separating, isolating that moment a choice happens, and you're not going to understand what I'm saying right now. It's something you're going to look at and uncouple.
So Ramiz, just taking what Jenny said, can you just unmute yourself there, Ramiz?
okay.
Taking what Jenny said, hold up your right hand right now.
Like this?
Just in front of the camera. Yeah. Yeah. Now turn it over. Why did you turn it that way? Was there You turned it that way. What made the choice to turn it that way?
I don't know.
Right. This is a direct experience of, it seems so simple, but right there, the hand turned over and there wasn't such a thing as a conscious thought choosing which way to turn it. Is that what your experience was?
It wasn't like there wasn't a choice.
Right, right.
The
So-
difference between that and the seemingly bigger choices is that you make those choices big in your imagination and you build a lot of stress and worry over them, but they're the same. But without the dialogue, without the commentary.
So
I think
So
the
Ramiz,
difference-
this is what Paul Simpson was pointing to, these very simple exercises that actually, as Jenny points to, gets us away from the convoluted thinking and really gets us down to the bare bones, shall we say, of what's happening.
And choice isn't going to give you control. You'll never have control.
It's not exactly accurate, but one possibility that you might employ is the idea that choice happens. It's just not you that does it. So imagine that the universe makes the choice. That might be a helpful place to perspective to look at things from temporarily.
Has anybody ever... Carry on.
I'm unmuted now. I'm sorry. The only thing I wanted to say was what helped me a lot was the idea of stories. You know, when I have my mind going, you know, a million things, whether it's about a decision or a whatever, when I slow down and go, oh, that's a story, you know, and just look at it as a story, because that's really all it is. You know, it's the mind just telling a story. But anyway, that helps me a lot when I get into that mind thing, realizing that it's just a story, or even a belief. What's a belief but a story? A story that someone told you that you should do or think or whatever. So I like the idea of stories. So that's, anyway, my 2 cents on this. It helped me.
Has anybody ever found themselves not knowing what they're going to do, and then finding themselves actually taking your coat and putting it on, and your hat or your bag, and you find yourself, oh, you find yourself actually doing it? It's something, the body just takes over. You weren't sure about what to do, and then you find yourself going for your coat or your hat, and you say, oh, I'm going out.
That was a life changer for me. You know, I always used to get frustrated about things because I always wanted something different. And at some point, it was like life decides. I do what's in front of me. So there's no decision to be making, no choice to be made. I just do what's in front of me, whatever it is, at any time. I'll just do that. And it's so liberating. It's so freeing. It's wonderful.
Yes, yes.
I really like Byron Katie, and one of my favorite phrases that she says is, do you know how you were supposed to do that? Do you know how you know that you were supposed to do that? Let's say you put on your coat. Do you know how you know you were supposed to put on your coat? Because you did.
Yeah.
You know how I know I'm supposed to just buy the thing I bought? Well, because I did. Because I tell you, the mind will make up all kinds of stuff before and after.
Yeah.
I was going to say that the way to investigate any of it is, I think in terms of LU basics, is to question the assumptions that support each, like if you're looking at choice or a chooser. But then when Vince said that, it makes me think that there's that process, but then there's also what actually happens. And it's really independent of any process that's used. It's all mysterious. There's always that element of mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's beautiful. I just love it. I love that mystery. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And getting comfortable in the unknown is interesting because I have no idea what I'm going to do in the next moment. I don't know if I'm going to stay on this call. I don't know. And I used to be a planner of the future, you know, that illusion of security. And, you know, people say, well, when are you going to retire? I don't know. I make up some story maybe here, but who really knows what's going to happen? I have no clue what's going to happen in my next breath. And getting comfortable in that is been quite a journey. Yeah.
I feel like I've done so many things like therapy and so much reading and all of it. And then I can stand back and see that none of it did anything at all. Whatever happened just happened.
Yeah.
I have no idea how it happened.
Even the therapy, it's just what happened. It's like nothing does anything, but we still do it. And then it's like we make up a story that it either made a difference or it didn't, but it's just happened.
But we should do it anyway.
It just happens. There's no choice to do it anyway. It just does. Yeah, we didn't waste money. We didn't waste time. We just did what was in front of us in the moment that it happened.
And I used to think, you know, like I was 65 when I woke up, and I used to think, geez, it wouldn't have been good if I woke up when I was 25 or even earlier, you know. And then I realized that all of that 40 odd years of seeking, that was all required for me to wake up when I did. It wouldn't have happened. It had to happen that way. There's no choice. Okay. Bianca wants to say something.
Listening to Ramis, I had a feeling that it's not the feeling of agency or not feeling agency that is the problem. It's the fear that is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Yeah. And
maybe it says more about me.
Oh no, I think it's fundamental. I think that's the foundation that David was referring to, that fear which comes from this idea of losing the self is the foundation that all that rests on. Yeah. Lindy's got a hand up.
I was going to just say too, if it's the fear, then maybe the best thing to do with Ramiz is help him feel his fear, because if that's what causing chaos in the mind before and after choice, anyway, helping him feel that fear might be the thing that best serves.
You'll have to talk to Ramiz in a minute after Lindy's had a say about whether he wants to go there.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that we're meeting Ramiz quite where he is, because after seeing, it's a very different kettle of fish, and I can see it from both sides, because I'm very aware. I chimed with what Yvonne was saying, that have you never had the experience? You think, what should I do? And then you're finding yourself doing it. And I had that, but it was for a very short time, and I'm so fortunate I can fall back on that. So during a glimpse, if you like, that did happen to me. I thought, I was sitting there thinking, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? And before the thought had even finished, I was just doing whatever it was that was going to happen. So number one, I was very lucky, but that was during a state, perhaps, or not a state, and a small period of what I would call awakening. So I'm very lucky I can fall back on that, but it sounds like Ramis hasn't had that. And since, and although I've got that, it doesn't always work. But I think I've seen a couple of things, and I think I've referred to it here. Science actually shows us, there have been experiments to show that whatever is going to happen before you think about it, that the thought comes afterwards. And I still rely on that now, because I think, well, whatever I decide, it's sort of already been decided before I decide. So I don't know whether that's helpful or not, but before, when you're not, when you haven't realized all this in a clear way, hearing what other people say, it's interesting, but it's not terribly helpful in the moment. But I think if Ramis, there have been plenty of experiments that show thoughts come after the action.
Action. It's already decided in the body. It's already decided that you're going to get out of bed before you get out of bed. Before you think you made that decision to get out of bed, the body has already decided that before you think, oh, I'm going to get out of bed. It happened before. Yeah.
Okay, I would describe this as a bit of synchronicity. When I was guiding somebody yesterday, I sent them a link, and I've just put it in the chat for you, for exactly this thing, the scientific experiment that showed that the brain knows what you're going to do before you know what you're going to do. The link's there if you want to look at it. Yeah.
And that has been life-changing for me, aside from any realization things, just knowing that if you're still very much living in a mind-identified world of duality, knowing things like that hugely help you. It just in your day-to-day.
But you still have to listen. But you still have to also, you have to look at the science, and then the science says this, and you think, oh, okay, I'll believe it then because the science says so. But it has to actually happen for you before you really know that that's what happens.
I agree, but I think if we're meeting Ramis where he is, which is a lot of the time where I still am, and life is really tough and you've got to make a choice. Actually, these stopgaps are incredibly helpful because they point absolutely to what really is going on. And even if it's only a pointer, if you can rely on that in the short term, that's great. And then you kind of embed it and it becomes more part of you.
Yeah.
So I'm
jump in for a second.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just I wanted to jump in.
They're going, Will.
I'm just like, I'm more with Ramis. I think I haven't lost only for brief moments the self is gone. So like I've gone on a few dates with a girl, and like the last few days it's been wrecking my head all the time. Like it's taking up the space, getting me out of the present moment, on whether to continue to date this person or not. So like, how does that, so has the decision, like, I don't, like, it feels like I'm going to make a choice. I'm going back and forth. There's going to, I don't understand.
I think just relax. Don't even think about it. Let it happen.
Well, listen, what will happen is what will happen is what will happen is what will happen. There's no getting around that one, right? So this is the thing. If thinking about it goes on, then thinking about it goes on. What that means is the critical thing here for you. So if you just accept that, okay, so your mind is going crazy running around this idea of will I, won't I, and all the reasons why and all the reasons why not and all that kind of stuff.
Exhausting.
When all that finishes, guess what? You will or you won't. One of them will happen.
Yeah, but it's so exhausting. All that shall I, shan't I? My God, it's exhausting.
It is, but it feels like that you have to go through, it feels like you have to go through this process to come to a decision. That you can't come to a decision. Like I'm just thinking in out loud that it feels like I've always done this. So like I have to go through a process of pluses and minuses to come to a decision. I can't just come to a decision without doing that.
But what if,
Maybe-
what, that's
But you're
not
not
true.
going to come to a decision. You're not going to make a decision. It'll happen
Yeah,
one way or the other. It
What if
appears
that's
like you're
just-
making a decision. That's all. Just appears like that. But what will happen is that somewhere along the way, you'll go, what the fuck is going on? And it'll drop. And then you'll realize, and so your experience will show you that you didn't need to go through that mental turmoil to arrive at a decision, because the decision just takes care of itself. And so the moment you experience that, next time you don't have to do it. But at the moment, that's the way things work for you. And there's nothing right or wrong about it. The idea that is a necessary forerunner to a decision being made, that's just a big story. That whole thing is just a big story. But you don't see that yet. But you will.
Well, and I wonder if it doesn't feel that way, either inside Ramiz or Will, if there's thought that's creating, you know, almost like this internal static, and then it's trying to sense into, can I be with that static? You know, because it might feel like, oh my God, I got to do something about this. It doesn't quite feel right. And then there's also, you know, patterning that goes along with that or reinforcing that. It reminds me of what Jenny was saying about
Feel the
you know,
energy
this-
coming up with it. Yeah.
yeah, like the tornado and the gap, and it's quite a thing to even be able to sometimes, you know, feel into that gap or stay there if we're not accustomed to being with whatever that charge is. So I don't know if that's the case for either one of you, but I'm curious about that.
It's funny because sometimes it's like if I made a choice for tomorrow, a week will pass and I will still be in this tornado about what should I have done. And it doesn't make any sense anymore, but it's like, it's very seductive maybe, or it has like a hypnosis effect. Like I have to figure out what was the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So you
And
do
then when
It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
In a practical sense.
So you're doing it both with the past and with the future. You know, what should I have done? What will I do? So on and so on. Do you get that? Do you get that while that's happening for you, it gives you a sensation of solidness. You feel very, very real, very, very here while that's going on. This is part of why it happens. It's the most solid feeling you can get out of an eye is in the midst of all of that turmoil that's going on. You're very alive in that moment.
It's very uncomfortable, very suffocating, and very familiar at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but that's a discomfort you're really happy to put up with because of the rewards of feeling so alive while it happens.
Yeah, but it feels like it's better than making the wrong choice. Like being in this state is more tolerable or something like that.
Mm.
You know, Ramiz, so a lot of times these patterns are so familiar. So this belief that let's go not only to the belief that you can make a choice, but the belief that you can make a wrong choice. I think that's kind of more where the charge is, you know, because we're jumping to the belief you can even make a choice. And I think that's the focus I'm hearing is there's a belief you can make a wrong choice. And it's probably a pattern that you learned very young. So where I would go into the feeling of what happens if you make a wrong choice.
Yeah, yeah.
And how does that feel?
I like that.
How does
Yeah.
that feel in your body? when you make what you believe to be a wrong choice. Because that's where the unintegrated charge is.
Yep. The whole point of making a choice is to choose the right one, isn't it? Or to avoid the wrong one. That's great. I love that, Jenny. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I've got a couple of hands up here. Let's jump in. Leonard, go.
Yeah, I wanted to say something similar because I know quite very well, I think, how much suffering it can be if you have like this tornadoes and overthinking and fear and imagining situations that could happen if you take the wrong choice and so on. And I would say I can intellectually already understand what is happening when it is happening to me. I can still have these things happening in my head, but I don't identify with it anymore. And it also helps me a lot to detect that it's like a story. And the other thing is that, yeah, sometimes it can be annoying because it's still happening to me and I can't have any control over it. But yeah, it's kind of a new thing for me to then really go into the bodily sensations. And I think I'm starting to be able to resolve it, but then also I think yeah, I'm watching the videos of Pernille, and yeah, for example, when I start to overthink, I really understood that that's also a way of diverting. My mind is creating a problem, but actually the thing underneath that is something really different. For example, yeah, some weeks ago on a Friday, I messed something up at work. And then it happened to me that all the weekend I was always starting to think about, oh, I think my connection is a bit bad today. I found myself thinking not all the weekend, but like I always got back to thinking about this thing, and that my boss would be angry at me on Monday and stuff like that. And at some point I looked into what was that fear or this kind of imagining conflicts and situations, and then I really understood that the underlying thing was shame, because I think in the past I have had an issue with groups and wanting to belong to groups, and I'm new in this job. So then also in my past I had this thing of I'm not really able, or I'm not really a professional person, but now at work I have to play this role of being really professional, and I'm not that good and in that. So kind of, I think it's the typical shame of yeah, having this fear of being excluded from the group. And then in the end it felt quite clear to me, like, well, it's only shame, the good old Neanderthaler thing. I mean, it's probably one of the oldest emotions that that we can have. And that also really helped me to resolve it, or even to understand that these stories that I'm telling to myself about, I have an issue with groups and stuff like that, and then some things from my past. And now I really feel like, do I really? I mean, it's not necessarily true either, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, shame is a very foundational thing as well. Yeah. Bianca, you wanted to say something?
Oh, well, I liked what Rami said about this, that it feels better than to make the wrong choice. And yeah, when you were choosing, yeah, not choosing to turn the hand, there is no fear with this. And what you said about this tornado, yeah, the tornado has a quiet center, but it's the fear that sucks. For me, it's the fear that sucks me into this tornado from the center.
It's not, we think it's the choice or making a wrong choice.
Yes, it's not no choice. I am sucked and I have no choice but to go into the tornado.
We think that making the wrong choice is what we're afraid of, but that's the story. What we're afraid of is feeling that happens when we think we make a wrong choice. So that feeling in our body that happens is what we're avoiding by trying not to make what we think is a wrong choice. So where to go is go ahead and feel the thing that we don't want to feel, that we're trying to avoid by overthinking, so we can avoid that feeling by making a right choice.
Okay, this is a big one here. Now, I know from what Remiz has said before that he does recognize the sensations, and he goes to the sensations and he sits with them. But there's something he misses that I can't put my finger on. The ramifications of that he doesn't get somehow. And that's where I'm at a bit of a loss with Ramiz about that. I know he knows about getting into the sensations. He does.
Right. So it's that feeling is very familiar because it's an unintegrated memory, a program. I don't know how to describe, we can make stories, but it's very familiar, that feeling. So if I only make right choices, I'll never, ever have to feel that again. So it's not the choice you're afraid is making, it's feeling that feeling you're afraid of having. So when you make a wrong choice, what you think is a wrong choice, and you have that feeling you've been trying to avoid, feel it fully and don't avoid it. And the stories of regret and shame, those are just keeping you back to that feeling, which feels on the emotional level, feels like regret and shame, but it feels like a vibration in your body as well. So you get even deeper than the emotions and you feel the sensation. Is it throbbing? Is it vibrating? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it solid? Is it dense? Is it confusing? Feel the sensations underneath the labels that we're calling shame and regret. Those are the things you're trying to avoid by making the right choice. And when you feel it, you'll have nothing left to run from.
So that when you feel them, then does that take you right back to when you were a child? And you will
the
probably
stories might. Yeah, the stories might bring you back to a child memory, but they're not important. The stories aren't important. The stories can bring you back out of that vibrational in your body, or you can use them to say, okay, maybe that's a memory, but doesn't matter where it came from, because the stories also bring you back into the vibration in the body. And that's where you want to be with that vibration.
I suppose what I was going to say is, so it takes you back to when perhaps you were conditioned so strongly by your parents or your society, well, your parents. So therefore, if it does take you down back to being a child, it'll also loosen the effect that.
But that doesn't matter, Yvonne. That doesn't matter at this stage. That may or may not happen, and it's not really something to focus on. Yeah, I'm more concerned about Will's about to rip his hair out. He doesn't know where to go right now.
Where's Will?
I had this has been coming up for me a lot, and I was listening to yesterday's conversation, and I think trust came up. But anyway, I was out for dinner with a couple of people last Saturday night, and there was a moment where it doesn't matter about the other person, but I got triggered, and it was because I am able to feel into the sensations and at times while it's happening, and I was very, and it was, and I really shut down. So I tried. It was shame. It was shame. I wanted to disappear. That's how I feel like it was shame, and it felt like my body just went numb, and it was just there was no sensations. It was like freeze. It was like freeze. And I kind of went back up.
Will, when you go into numbness, that is a sensation.
Yeah.
So you just be with the numbness. You just be with the numbness while the numbness is there, because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But you go up into your head because now you want to make stories about how you're numb and your body's shut down and all that stuff. But the numbness is what's happening.
You're 100%. I agree with you 100%. However, it just felt like it was too much. It felt like it was too much, and I wasn't able to stay with it. And I came home, and it's okay. And I came home, and the big revelation was, it was like I came home and I was like, oh my God, this is like, have to really just like, I can't feel anything, you know. But in the past I would have just went into a story, but I was lying in bed and trying to stay with this, and by the next day I was beginning to thaw out a little bit. But I do kind of feel like, I wonder, are there certain say shame, which is a strong one, certain emotions or certain triggers that are like too much at sometimes, that you can't, like, that it's too much, and I have to kind of like, that you can re-traumatize yourself even.
Well, it's what's happening. If what's happening is you don't be with it, then that's what's happening. Because the mind likes to make up what should be happening in each moment. But if what's happening is numbness, and then what happens is not being with the numbness and going and distracting instead, that's what's happening. That's okay, because the mind makes up that it's supposed to unravel a certain way. And there might just be coming in and out of it, and then go deeper in the next time, and then next time out, and then next time in, and the next time out. And we're not, because there's nobody doing this, it's what's happening. But the mind makes up, well, I should have stayed with the numbness longer, or I shouldn't have come out of it, or I should sit with it longer, or it's too much. It makes up these stories. But what's happening is what's happening. So when you're sitting with that intensity of shame and it goes numb, and then you sit with numbness, and then you find the mind going into the mind, then that's just what's happening. But what's watching it? What's watching what's happening? The unconditional.
There's one thing that Will mentioned, and I think it's probably an issue for Ramiz and possibly for others as well, and that is that the idea that there can be a meltdown, a total overwhelm situation. The way, if we look at fear not as an enemy, but as rather something that is intent on protecting us, right? It's totally misguided, but the idea of fear is to stop you from going somewhere because of what you imagine might happen. And so fear is there as a protector, right? And the closer you get to where it's concerned for you, the more intense it's going to be. So the whole purpose of it is to stop you from getting there. So it will certainly make it feel like you're going to die. You're going to be totally overwhelmed, and you're going to die. That's its job to do that. But here's the interesting thing. It's you doing it to you, and you're never going to give yourself what you can't handle. It might feel like you can't, and that's its job, but it's never actually going to be what you can't handle. If it's you can cope with it.
I've had experiences where I would have like an anxiousness come up. Well, we'll call it anxiousness, but a very intense sensation in the body and the core. And I would be with it and focus on it and just watch and watch and watch. And it would get so intense, I'd have to just jump up and go do something else. And I went in, so next time I did it again. But what happens is the mind starts building stories. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing it right. I should have stayed with it longer. The mind loves to make wrong. So just watch that. And some of these, it took me probably 5, 6, 10, 20 times, sometimes a couple of years to keep going in. And all of a sudden, one day it flipped to where it was very, very intense, but then it became pleasurable and then it released and it was gone. So there's no wrong way to do it. And you don't have to do it in one sitting. It just is happening the way it's happening. It's unfolding the way it's unfolding. So if numbness happens, it's not that you're feeling nothing, you're feeling numbness. That's what's happening. And you don't and if you see that you're making yourself sit and I need to be with it longer, then that's what's happening. The mind is having a conversation about how you're supposed to be doing it a certain way. And then you will or you won't. And then you'll either sit with it longer or you'll get up and go do something else and come back for it try another time. There's not a wrong way to do it, and you're always feeling something.
Yeah, it's a hard one to get your mind around. You can't do it wrong. Whatever is happening it's fine. It's okay. No matter what it feels like, no matter what you think about it, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Can't be
and
wrong.
It's traveling the way it's supposed to.
There's value.
And even numbness is a stage. It's just a level. So is that confusing, chaotic feeling? I can't feel anything. Well, you're feeling confusion and chaotic. We think it's supposed to feel a certain way instead of just being with the what is happening. There's nowhere to get. There's only what's happening.
So take the example of will I continue to date this person or not date this person? So there's ideas about stories about the future of whether you do or you don't. There's two different stories going on. Say you go from one story to the other story and back and so forth, and you think about details, you think about all sorts of things that are designed to help you make a decision and make the right decision. And I tell you what, no matter which decision you make, the time will come when you'll go, was it the right one? but you could simplify it down to this. Knock on a door first thing in the morning before she's had a chance to put on any perfume and smell her. And if that's pleasurable, go with her. And if it's not, don't. That truly is going to be your best guide for compatibility.
I went away for a few minutes and missed out on a couple things, but I was back to kind of what Ramez was saying. What I heard him say was like he was afraid of shame and regret.
And I guess I just, for me, like, I agree with all the things about choice and all those, like, I get it. But much later regret can come up anyway. You know, it's like, I wouldn't do now what I did when I was 20, not because I can control something now, but it's just, it's where I'm at now, right? Like, that's where the conditioning is at this moment, right? But it doesn't mean I can't realize like some of the things that I did it with the knowledge I had when I was 20, and now apologize or be with that, you know. Like, I guess for me, it kind of felt like we're bypassing a little bit, or it can be prone to bypassing, to say, oh, there's no person, so there's no regret. No.
Yeah.
Regret and shame are real thing, or real emotions, you know. Like, there's real story, and it is a story in the simplest form of it. It's a story that I can go back and say, I shouldn't have done that, I could have done better. Well, I couldn't have, I know I couldn't have done better, but the human psychological can still have the space to go and apologize or hear someone else's point of view.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'm all that.
But no matter how much you go back and forth with the should I, you're not going to protect yourself. I think that what you were saying to me felt like I just want to protect myself from regret, and that's not going to happen.
When we're not afraid of being with whatever shows up out there, because I used to be very uncomfortable with other people's reactions to me. So I was always trying to do the right thing and say the right thing and walk on eggshells, because I couldn't be with a look of disapproval or a look of upset or a look. So I was very uncomfortable with other people's reactions. I couldn't be with them because they would cause such pain in my body and fear. So as I felt that fear and that pain in my body, like I'm recommending, I can now be with other people's reactions to me. I can be with it. And because there's not something I'm trying to not feel. And then when I feel it, it's kind of like this free fall interaction of being whatever's happening. Sometimes it is an apology. Sometimes it's a stand for something else. It's whatever happens, but there's so much flowing now because I can be with people when there's a disappointment on that face or an upset on that face or something that I can be with it. I'm not scared of it anymore. And that gives this connection that I couldn't ever have before because I was avoiding people, because I couldn't be with myself. I couldn't be with what was triggered over here if I had that. So being with the thing you fear inside your body is freeing. And then there's more connection on the other side.
And then the other thing I kind of like, I heard what Liz said earlier when we first kind of were talking about identification, and I can't remember how she put it, but I know the gist of the thing. But what I was going to say was like, did it feel closer if it's like your child or something other than raising your hand, you know, or something like that, right? Like, does it feel more identified? And I had this experience last week where I got a text message suddenly in the middle of the day that said my father was in the emergency room in kidney failure, and this could be it, you know, like come to the emergency room, right? And my father's a couple hours away, so it's a drive. And like I said, this was a surprise, like the day before I saw my father working in the garden, so this was like a big shock. And it was really interesting what happened. All the way to the driving and everything, it was like all of this emotion, just like sobbing. And then about the time I got to the parking lot, it was like this huge, like peaceful letting go. And it was really interesting. It was like, suddenly there was this real apparent identification of I'm a daughter. And I have a father, And who would I be? And I know this is like a Byron Katie thing, but it actually is the way it appeared to me. Who would I be if my father dies? And what happens to all the stories about my father was a good father, I'm a good daughter, he was a bad father, he did this, I have been absent, he's been absent, he's an alcoholic. It just, oh, so much energy and time, and the stories, and there were times of regret and times of this and that, like it was all like right there. And then it was really hard to just like sit there in the car with all of that of like, well, there's the time I did this and I need to rush into the emergency room to be there for the last moment and get the final words in, and it all just went away. Like it was just all this, like it could just let go. All of the identification, all the years, all of the, even just the identification of the very basic, I'm a daughter. And so therefore I play this role in the world because I should do these things because my father's elderly and da, 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 da. And it all just felt like it was flying out the window, like it was just disappearing. And things I didn't even know I was so identified with were just disappearing. And then like the next day I came back and Vince has posted his video. Like that video we talked about earlier, Vince, where you're talking with that you were on that call with Pranoa. And when you had that where you talked about like, oh, it was just this like such like even the cells were letting go. Like I so resonated with it. Like that was like how this was, right? It was such a let go of something that I didn't even have consciousness of that I held so close to me. Was so identified with, because I'm not close to my family, like I have this idea of like, I'm very independent girl and I haven't lived near my family, da 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 story I could tell you, but it was just all so close to me suddenly. And then when I came home and I heard that, it was so like that, like what you described it so well, is it was just all of those things could just go. It just was stories up and down.
Beautiful.
That's all.
Appreciate what you just said and what Jenny said before, and kind of the reminding of, it is just however it is now, and it'll take the time it takes, and that it might take a really long time. And then when it's sort of felt to the depth, it's gone, in that sense of it's not a theory. And to me, there's so much that happens inside, or, I feel like the sensation and what happens inside my own body and what it means to stay with that, that I don't know. I don't need to put words all around it, but I just really appreciated what Jenny said, and that when we're drawing the picture of the spectrum of what it might be like and how different it is for different people to feel that numbness is a feeling, right? And that this is it right here. That feels significant to me.
Yeah, it actually extended to, I have a son as well, a grown son, and that actually extended to like my son too. Like I started feeling less like a mother, like less gripped, I guess, around the stories of the things of what I did right and what I didn't do right. And just to kind of tie that, just if someone had said to me like 2 weeks ago, like your father's getting older and you're, if the thought were to come about my father, my parents to pass on and all of that, I had definitely an idea in my mind of how I would handle that. And it did not go down that way. It's the only thing I'll say is that I have an idea of our relationship is at a distance. And so therefore, like there will be things that will need to be taken care of. And, that I have dealt with a lot of these things already. But in the moment when that was, yeah. So as far as like the choice and, you know, of how we handle things and all of that. Like I said, in no way would I have ever laid it out like it happened, you know, like what went on.
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
yeah. So part of what happens in this process of waking up is that we stop seeing what we expect to see, and we're open to seeing what turns up. Yeah. How are you traveling, David? How are you?
Say me?
Yeah.
I'm just working on not getting lost in thought.
Okay.
The conversation about choice. I think I'm happy. And I think some of the reason why is because I really don't seem to get involved in the choice very much. It's just, I do the next thing, and then I do the next thing, and then I do the next thing. But there's a difference between the way I am when I'm with myself and the way I am when I'm with other people. I notice the way my internal reactions are always changing. They're always varying degrees of intense. And I can see some of that, or I can see most of that, is wanting to control. Not to control me, but to control other people. Well, it's also to not control, to control me, to not have the internal experience I'm having. The other thing is my father used to tell me a story when I was young, or ask me a question when I was very young. And he said, okay, there's a frog that's jumping towards a well. And each time he jumps halfway. And how long does it take him to get to the well? And that's sort of the way I feel about waking up. Each time I get closer and closer and closer, but I don't get there.
Yeah. I like that. That's kind of good. Yeah.
Now, I'm not cynical enough to think I never will get there. Like, we know the frog never will.
I kind of think it's like the frog, you know. My imagination says that yeah, we'll always only get halfway, and when we die, we'll still be short of it, you know, no matter what.
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, and we were born. We were born jumping towards the well, and we never make it.
And the frog's quite happy every time, unless he starts having a story about getting there.
There it is. Yes. Yes. So when you hear other people in your life, how do you find yourself internally reacting to them? Are you
which people?
Yeah, people in your life, in your day-to-day life. When somebody's talking to you about something that's going on, or what they believe, or whatever. Are you in a way detached and just observing them? Or is there a part of you that gets pulled into shoulds and shouldn'ts and feelings of responsibility to change and then change them, and then the questioning of yourself about what you're believing and etc. Go ahead.
Well, for me, no, not anymore. There certainly would have been once been a desire to fix them, to help them. But I do get sucked in, and what I get sucked into is what they're feeling. So I'm really interested in where they're coming from. And I guess there is a comparison story goes on about where I'm coming from compared to that, but not in a judgmental way. Maybe that's not true either. Maybe there is some judgment about.
In a worried way?
Oh, no. And I don't feel any need to fix it. You know, like people are where they are, and that's okay, you know. And sometimes there's sadness if they're suffering. Certainly if they're suffering, I can feel sadness in a big way. And if they're happy, I feel joy in a big way. So, you know, there's that kind of, when I say sucked in, it's that, there's that involvement in that. But, you know, I don't kind of consciously think about this stuff in my normal daily life. I just go through with whatever's in front of me, doing whatever needs to be done, kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder if what's happening. It's almost standing in the way of empathizing. You are an empathetic person. I think I am too, but all of this junk prevents me from just, maybe that's what is happening. Maybe it's all just a way of avoiding the pain of compassion.
I feel that pain of compassion, and I feel it fairly intensely. And but it's a sweet pain, you know. I like it. I enjoy it. It's not something to be avoided for me.
Yeah. I think I enjoy it when I experience it.
Yeah.
And I do. I mean, I do experience it. And it's not that I'm trying to change other people. It's that I'm going through what I'm experiencing, and there's all this turmoil in what I'm experiencing, which is getting in the way of letting go and experiencing other people. Actually, you know, this doesn't, in my work, it doesn't happen. It's in personal relationships.
Yeah. It kind of feels to me like they're all personal relationships, even with strangers. But yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't experience turmoil. I don't experience any these days, any ideas that it should be different to what it is. It's very complex though. It is. It's not straightforward stuff, you know. It's okay. See, nobody in my daily life thinks like I do. They, you know, in fact, the majority of people in my life have really, really radically different, certainly political ideas and personal ideas as well, you know.
And so what happens to you internally when you hear somebody talking, let's say, about different political ideas?
What seems to happen is kind of a searching for where they're coming from, why they might be thinking like that. Looking for an understanding, right? You know, I know better than to try and change them, especially if they're, you know, really radical in their thinking. And some people in my life are like that. And I can see, you know, and I imagine, you know, when I say I can see, I imagine that that they're coming from a place of fear if they hold, for example, extreme right-wing ideas about life, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's trying to understand it that way is a way to me of trying to get away from how I'm experiencing what's going on for me when I'm with them.
Okay, so what is it that you're trying to get away from? What is it that feels uncomfortable for you? That's the real inquiry, isn't it?
Yes.
See, I don't feel uncomfortable anymore. I used to, but I don't these days. It's been a long time since I can remember feeling uncomfortable about that. But I guess it could happen again. But yeah, so if you're feeling uncomfortable, then obviously there's some juice there for you to work with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to work with. To just stay with the discomfort.
Well, by staying with it, of course, it will reveal itself. You know, the details will become more obvious as to what's going on. And of course, the trick, if you want to put it that way, the trick is to not have a judgment about it, but just observe it in a kind of a somewhat objective.
To my reaction. To not have a judgment about my reaction.
Yes, yes.
About what's going on inside me.
Yeah. So even if you think it's wrong, that you shouldn't be having that reaction, then that's what you investigate, that you think it's wrong. You know, you don't get carried away by the idea that it's wrong and go looking to stop it or change it or anything like that. You just watch it.
Yeah, I don't think I think it's wrong. I'm trying to understand it.
Yeah. So what kind of turmoil is it? So one of the techniques that is useful is to not get carried off into ideas about the turmoil, but rather to go closer to the feeling of turmoil. You know, so the body doesn't lie. So if you get closer and closer to what it is you're feeling, often the surrounding stories will reveal themselves or even just dissipate, you know.
Yeah, I am more and more becoming able to focus on the body rather than the emotion.
Yes, yeah. So if you see emotion as sensation plus a story, or feeling is a sensation plus a story, and you go for the sensation component of the feeling, the stories just go away, you know, or they reveal themselves. And usually when they reveal themselves, they're seen as being a bit of a joke. Inappropriate.
Yeah, the stories are what I call getting lost in thought.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There's a lot of stories going on in here.
Well, we're story creators. That's what mind does. We make stories, you know. So it's not a case of stopping them. It's a case of just recognizing them for what they are. Yeah.
Yes, recognize them for what they are requires, I don't know what you call it, observation, being in the present, observing, being aware, whatever you call it. There has to be an awareness there that's seeing that you are thinking.
Yes. Yeah, so that meta situation, that one step removed, that slight objectification of it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a skill we develop with practice, that one.
Okay. And how do you, okay, use the word practice. How does one practice that?
Well, well, the way I give people to do that is that if you get lost in that, if you get lost in thoughts in a story, either you will at some point recognize that you are lost or you won't.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
you don't know that you don't, right? It
Right.
just happened, right?
Right.
But if you do, then you laugh, right? What you do is you celebrate that recognition moment. Now that could happen at the time or afterwards a little bit, or even the next day, or even the next week. It doesn't matter. Whenever you recognize that you were lost, you laugh. And what that does is you set up a trigger point. You set up you're more likely to recognize it, and you're more likely to recognize it sooner.
You're conditioning yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely, you're conditioning. Yeah, setting up new pathways in the brain.
Right.
And the thing is that recognition is usually all it takes to dissipate the whole thing.
Yes. Right. So
there's a question that comes up for me related to this. It's resonating because several weeks ago I asked Pernilla a similar question to your original one, David, about how to be there for other people. And let's say that there's a family member, a close friend that comes to you because they're feeling really sad about a particular situation. And you have other sensations and emotions that arise. Maybe it's a frustration or an annoyance. And so there's both this sadness that is present in the other person's story, and there is what is arising for you. When you're experiencing things completely on your own, it feels like a different sort of space where you can just pause and be with your own sensations, because there isn't anybody else that you're interacting with. And so you're not in those times where you're by yourself driving, you're not asking somebody else to just stop and give you the space to look inside. You're now in an interaction, and there's this sort of conflict, if that makes sense. So to contrast that with somebody comes, say my daughter comes to me with something where she's feeling a lot of sadness. If I have nothing that's arising really in me, I can experience that sadness and support her and create that space for her. But if I've got something else that's arising, how do I navigate this? Like, I can't really be there with her and feel the sadness because I've got this other stuff that's arising that's getting in the way. And any suggestions or advice on approaching that sort of situation?
I have something that you can't be with another till you be with yourself. And if you try to override yourself to be with another, it's clouded, and all they're going to feel is that irritation you're trying to override. You can't override yourself. Sometimes it might be, hey, I got something coming up. I really want to be with you. Let me go sit with this myself first. Just honesty, authenticity, and then be with that, because otherwise you're not an open space as much as you try to be something other than what you are in that moment.
That's not easy to do. That's not easy to do though, because the other person might think you're not interested.
They might think that, yes, and you can even address that. You can even address that. Hey, I know it might seem like I'm not interested, but I want to give my full attention to you. And I'm not able to right now because I've got a lot going on in my body and my mind, you know, and they're going to think what they think, but it doesn't matter what they think ultimately, because it doesn't change the fact that you can't be over there until you're in open space.
Yeah. If only we'd all been helped to understand that when we were younger, we would all be a lot better at listening to each other.
Yeah, there's a couple of
Jeremy
interesting
says
points
about
here.
that.
Go on.
When what Jeremy says about when you're in when you're a participant in a conversation, and it's when you're in a conversation, it's difficult to be empathetic with somebody else because you get lost. If you're in a conversation, you're also lost in your own thoughts.
Learning to be with yourself in real time as a conversation's happening, because ultimately that's all that's real is you. You're what you're feeling. That's actually what's happening. So to learn to be with yourself in real time, because otherwise we want to be with the other person because we're afraid that if we're not, they're going to think we don't care. They're going to get angry. They're going to disapprove. All this bad stuff's going to happen, which makes us even more fearful. So we avoid being with ourselves even more. So learning to be present with what's happening in your space in real time, even though you're with another person, seeming to have a conversation. Because when you're in that open space, you do feel one, you feel connected, you feel what they feel when they feel it. You're there with them on the ride and there's nothing in the way. But if there's something in the way, that's what's happening. And that's the only thing you can be with, and the fear of them not being okay with that.
But what happened? Yes, but when you're speaking to somebody else, I mean, when I'm speaking, I'm trying to express myself, and I'm not. I mean, it's about me when I'm speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's with my thoughts when I'm speaking, because speaking comes from thoughts. So, well.
Yeah. Okay, here's a guide that I would use for myself. I recognize that what I see out there, other people and the world in general, what I see is my interpretation, right? It's unique to me. It's as a result of my conditioning, right? So what I see is kind of a version of me, but I project. That's the way things work. And that works for everybody. Everybody else will see what they expect to see, what they've been conditioned to look at, what filters they've been conditioned to look through to see what's going on. So people aren't going to see me. They're going to see what they think of me, right? So what's my choice, if you want to use that word, is I can try and manipulate me in a way that has a certain, gives them something to respond to, which is just a crazy thing. It's not really a choice at all. Or I can try and be authentic. You know, now even if my authenticity says that I'm sorry, I can't listen to you at the moment because what's happened is that I've become overwhelmed with what's going on in me. That's authentic, and that's the best thing I can offer them. If that ever happened, if it ever got to that stage, it doesn't normally. Well, I don't ever remember it happening like that for me, but it could. So that being authentic is really your only option. Now, being authentic doesn't mean that you're going to dismiss their concerns or whatever they've come to you with or whatever they're trying to express. But what it may mean is that I have to take that into account when I'm relating to them. So it's not, there's no black and white. There's not, but there is black and white in that I don't have any choice but to be authentic. Right. So if you're doing it with you, you're going to know what I'm feeling because I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
But I'll be gentle with it if I think you're in a delicate space. I'll be gentle with how I tell you what I'm feeling. I won't be too blunt. But if you're in a strong space, I'll be blunt, probably. I don't know.
Yes.
David, I got the impression you answered your own question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were saying that every time you talk, it's about you. Yeah. And I agree completely because every time I talk, it's me. Yeah. So if you're with somebody else and you think that when you talk, it's about you, then I think you know exactly what you should do.
Which is?
Well, I thought you'd jump straight there. Say nothing.
Oh.
Give the other person the space. Don't fill it with you. I mean, that's what I do. I fill it with me and I shouldn't.
Well, this isn't an issue of me feeling hesitant about speaking. I can most of the time, I can speak confidently, etc., and still be, you know, there's the hint of I'm worried about how they're going to feel, but that really isn't going to get in the way. All that I'm saying is that when I'm listening to you, I am hearing what you're saying and I'm aware of what's going on inside of me. That's what I think of what awareness is. But when I'm speaking, I'm not, that awareness isn't there. I'm lost in the thoughts of speaking. So whenever I'm speaking, the awareness goes away.
Oh, okay, that's a different thing. So yeah, what comes to mind for me immediately is that I don't think about what I'm going to say. I just open my mouth and out it comes.
Yeah, same here. Words are just happening. There's no sensation going on in the body usually. It's just like right now, words are coming out of this mouth and they're just happening.
I instantly have a feeling of sadness about the energy involved in having a conversation in your head before you actually say it. Wow, that must be hard work. I don't know about that one.
I do. I used to have that conversation in my head the whole time I was talking. And then after I was finished talking, because whatever I said was either dumb or whatever. And now it's like, no, just words happen. I'm done. Mind is quiet.
When I'm listening, I can be like I can be very judgmental a lot of times. So I'm just wondering about this. So being judgmental, so that would be a thought, right? And then so if I'm listening and I'm being judgmental, so should I just go into the body and feel what being the judgmental feels like?
Yeah.
And listen to
that, yeah.
Be with it in your body.
Being aware that you're being judgmental, and any opinion is a judgment, but being aware that you're being judgmental would result in hilarity. I could only laugh at the idea that I'm being judgmental. Who the fuck am I to be judgmental about anything? So it's pretty funny, isn't it? If I recognize that I'm being judgmental, and that just changes everything. The judgments go away the moment I recognize that I'm being judgmental.
Yeah, and it may show up different ways. it depends on the intensity and where it comes from. So some judgments are like, oh, there I go again. And other judgments are, wow, that's really, whew, that one brought up some stuff. So it kind of depends on where it is. You just be with what.
Yeah. And the recognition of judgment is the recognition of identification. You're identifying when you're judging. You're recognizing that you've got beliefs, blind beliefs. You're recognizing that you're recognizing a whole lot of stuff about yourself the moment you recognize that you're being judgmental. And a really important thing is you don't try and stop it from happening. You don't go, that's bad, I shouldn't do it. Because that's just another judgment, isn't it? You're judging the judgment. And if you do, don't judge that.
When I walk in the park with my dog and there's a certain man there, and actually there's two people, this is a very similar energy, and they complain a lot, like, oh, this and oh, that. Every time I see him, it's like, this is on and on and on. And there's a story in my head that's when I was a child, my mother did that. And I wasn't forced, but I chose to very young to just be with that. And like, I didn't have I don't know. Anyway, so it's a lot of story energy and there's a lot of it. So I kind of avoid them because I can't listen to them. It brings up all this judgment and, oh, would you stop already? And just on and on and on and on. Cause it reminds me of when I was 7 years old with my mother, and I haven't completed that yet. So what I practice doing is every time I see them and I trigger that, instead of making myself walk over and be nice, pretend you're not, irritated by this, it's BS. So instead I just turn around, I walk, I just kind of try to not, I don't want to hurt them. So I don't like obviously spin on my heels, but I kind of go the other way, but I sit with that residual tension that's unintegrated, and it'll take as long as it takes.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll walk up and I'll be with them and they'll do it and I'll feel it. And I'm like, oh, and it's only so much. And then I'll just keep walking on because it'll take as long as it takes for me to process that.
Vince, could you?
Sure, I wanted to say. Oh, I wanted to just say that I really appreciated Jeremy's question. And I think it's and I love the examples everyone's giving. And this reminds me of that piece before about how close it is to you or whether you have choice when you live with somebody, who if you're triggered repeatedly, right, or you have those thoughts. And I appreciate adding in the authentic piece. It makes me wonder about just sometimes it feels like it comes through. It's really authentic. Like I'm struggling to listen to you because I'm having my own internal reaction right now. So it's interesting to think about being explicit with that. And it totally blows apart ideas we might have about parenting, right? And how it is we might, model parenting, or that there's so much happening inside my own nervous system that I'm struggling, right, to even be with what's happening for you. Is fascinating to me. And I noticed this very thing, Jeremy, as it happened. It happened with something that's like sensitive for someone else. I was on a hiking trail. Somebody wanted to go to speed. I didn't want to go. And this feeling of like being in conflict, like both wanting to be empathetic, but also feeling angry about what was happening. And then having this interaction. And I love Vince and Jenny, you saying like, oh, that doesn't happen anymore, or for certain things, right? Some things can be triggering, some not, but particularly when it's people where we are, we don't have it feels like at least we don't have a choice to walk away or not respond. It can up the ante internally. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
And the time will come when you'll seek them out in order to get triggered, just so you got something to work on.
Yeah.
Jenny, what do you do when the person in the park is somebody that you can't get away from?
Well, then I stand there and I be with what's internal within me. I feel like I'm stop, honey. it's almost like the mind is afraid they're going to notice that my eyes are glazed over and I'm being with what's in, but most of the time they don't even notice because they're very consumed in their own experience. And so at first I was afraid to be with myself because I didn't want them to think I wasn't listening and attack me, because that's what happened as a child. So when I chose to go ahead and be with my experience, and they don't seem to notice. And so I just be with my experience while they go on until it's over. And then my body finds itself walking off, or they walk away, or whatever happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Some people I'll do the authentic thing with. Other people I don't, because I'm not feeling there's an open place for that. They would just take that wrong on top of taking that wrong and taking. So I don't. I'm quiet and just be with my experience. Other times when I'm feeling a little more open and because I can feel the receptivity or not, if it's safe to be authentic in that moment, there's an opening, then I will.
Okay.
Where it's not going to cause more chaos and more confusion.
How to know if I'm feeling that there is an opening with someone, or I'm just projecting?
Well, you won't know, because this is you again trying not to make a mistake. So if you go ahead and try to be authentic and they get more chaotic, then you know just to go back in, be internal with yourself. If you, it's risk, it's free fall. You put a toe in, and if it causes more chaos, then you be with the more chaos. Ooh, okay, that caused more chaos, but it's always chaos over here because it's the only thing you can experience. There's no one over there, right? And then if you put a toe in and there's receptivity, then you go, okay, cool, I'm going to go be with myself now. And then you excuse yourself because that worked. But you don't know till you put the toe in, and you can't make a mistake. You can only be with what's happening. Don't jump off the cliff. Put a toe in. Check it out. Risk it. That's what's the best teacher, because that's going to teach you. That's going to teach you, because you're going to be able to start feeling when you can put a toe in, when you can put a little more in, or when it's creating more chaos and be back off. But the more you go in and you apply that, the more obvious it's going to be when you can. You have to get messy sometimes to learn.
Is it me, or I feel like in this journey of seeking, it seems like every person I meet in this group or other groups, I feel like I know them. Like each person in this group, I feel like I know them from before.
You do. You know everyone on the whole planet. But the thing is when the way we speak, we're speaking, if you will, to the soul. So we're speaking to what's you in me. And so because you recognize that in yourself and me, it feels like you know us. But this is actually for everyone.
I don't mean like psychologically or connection. I mean like the faces even. It's like I recognize you from somewhere, and I don't know if this is just my imagination.
Well, there's a connection, and connection makes you feel like I know you. That for me, that connection, it's like I know you. You're my brother, right? It's a connection that's when there's this level of authenticity and truth. There's a connection that we feel, but we can feel this with everyone. It's just that the conversation here is very open and very authentic.
You know, Vince and Jenny have said, and I'm sure there's other people on here who can do it, that they don't think about what they're going to say first. It just comes out. Sadly, I'm still in a position where I think about it a lot first. But what I've found works for me, all these things get very complicated and very deep and very psychological. I try to make one of the LU exercises real. You know, there's this exercise about, is it an apple? And the word apple obviously isn't the apple. So I wish I could do this real time, but when I get time to think about it, every time I attach any word to anything I'm thinking, feeling, doing, it's wrong. Yeah, every single time. So if
James.
I think, well,
That's right.
yeah, no, I agree completely. So if I sit there and, you know, somebody said something to me and I feel upset, when I think about it afterwards, okay, that word upset was wrong. Yeah, or, and then, you know, if I think, oh, I did this and I did the right thing, no, that was wrong. And this only happened once, but I kept stripping away the words. And when I stripped away the first level of story, the first words, there was a whole nother layer of stories and words I attached underneath. And then when I got rid of those, and it went down about 5 or 6 layers, and finally there were no more words. And all the feelings and resentment and hurt went away. And I was in this empty space.
Absolutely.
I wish I could do that all the time. And I wish I could do it in real time. But I don't know if that'll help anybody else.
Okay, yeah, great. This is a big one. I love this. Yeah, that's beautiful. That when you got to the point where there were no words that could accurately describe anything, that's a parallel world. That's a world where awake people have a lot of awareness of, right? Because they're not lost in the layers and layers and layers and layers of words up above it. Yeah. But nobody lives there all the time. Doesn't matter. Add your shanty, take who you like, any of the so-called totally enlightened people. They don't live there all the time. They live in the same world that you live in. They just know the other one exists and they can visit it whenever they like. That's it. Maybe somebody does live there all the time, but I have no idea about that. I don't know anybody that does, and I certainly don't. But it's there, and it's easy to visit. Gets easier and easier with practice. But yeah, otherwise, it's the same world that you live in.
Nothing special happening over here.
Vince, when you spoke about not getting or seeing the involvement happening, there was just like there were moments of immense freedom in just watching that and seeing that, and then there was a point where I started to hit like a fear barrier, like, oh, that's a lot of freedom there. Let's let's tone it down. Why is that? Why is that arising?
I have no idea the answer to that one. Yeah, I guess it can be scary. It could be scary stuff. Look, you know, the story that jumps up here is that, you know, it's like we're talking about existence. You know, if you get down to that total freedom, it's like there's no Brian anymore. He's gone. You know, all there is experiencing, and you know, we better watch out for that, because if Brian's gone, what is there? You know, that's another story. But that's just my imagination. I don't really know where that fear comes in, but I recognise that there is that fear for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I won't be able to like already when somebody's talking, or like one of my brothers or just someone in general, I can't really keep track of what they're saying, especially if I'm really with my experience. It feels like I just can't keep track of it. And I won't be able to keep track of anything. Total loss of control. That's what it feels like. That's the fear.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to some fundamental thing about what we're not doing is we're not taking an existing self and getting rid of it. Well, we're recognizing that it never ever existed. Right? But until we kind of get a glimpse of that, we are concerned that what will happen when that self is gone. That's where the fear comes from. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you from now until the cows come home that you don't have to worry about that, because you'll operate perfectly fine when that's gone. But that doesn't help. That's just words, you know. Yeah. But it only takes about a millisecond of a glimpse on your part for you to get that idea, you know, for you to experience it, and then some trust exists, or some mistrust is gone that way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the theory is definitely just a story, and it even seems like it's possible just not to pay it any mind. Like,
No,
there's
that's not the way to go. That's
Yeah.
just depression or denial or bypassing. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
You don't, you know, everything that comes up, you pay it some attention, but you don't need to get lost in it. You just notice it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I keep saying this, but and again, it's only words. That's why I have to keep repeating myself, you know, no matter what happens, it's okay. There is nothing, can't be anything wrong. Wrong is just a stupid idea. Whatever comes up, no matter how pleasant or unpleasant it is what comes up, and it's okay. And and especially if it's unpleasant, but even if it's pleasant, it can show you something. And you don't have to worry about what it can show you. Just appreciate that it's showing you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's a bit weird, but yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm thinking it's time to wind up.
What a wonderful, wonderful meeting today. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, I feel this way about all of you, you know, that Ramiz, that feeling of knowing people, every time I think of that, I have to put my hand on my heart. It comes from there, that knowing. It's not from here, it's from here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
See you all later.
Smile.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
guys.